his new series. I believe it's a 5-parter, and it's called Inside Out. Enjoy, guys.
Thanks for the golf clap. That's cool. I like a slow cut and then gradually build up, like before a high jump. That'd be great. Inside Out. Who's seen the movie? And number 2 one's out as well. I watched that the other day, half asleep. I'm getting old now, so I have to fall asleep in movies and then do them in 2 parts. But yeah, we're going to do 5 weeks of the series Inside Out, and it doesn't matter if you haven't watched the films. It doesn't matter if you hate Disney. I don't care. It's sort of irrelevant. We're just using it as a tool to talk about a few things. But if you have seen the movie, the first one I think is better than the second one, but maybe that's controversial. But the movie portrays the emotions that shape this young girl's life called Riley. This is Riley. And in the second movie, she's a bit older. But it's all about her emotions and how that shapes her life. And you go through, you see more inside her head than outside her head, which is why I find it quite interesting. But each character symbolises a different emotional force, right? And I know the people who know me well in here, I get the irony of me bringing a message about emotion. All right, I understand the irony there, but maybe I'm so detached from it, I can do it well. So, effectively, if you haven't seen the movie, I think, have we got a picture of them all at the desk? Yeah. So all of these characters, all of these emotions, all of these things inside of Riley's head are fighting for control, or maybe they take turns sometimes at different points when it's poignant, when they should be in control. We have all these different characters. We're not going to go through them all. But maybe you can, if you've seen the movies, maybe you can identify with one of them. I find more and more as I get older and more tired, I relate to this fella down here. I don't have anyone else in the room? I've got a couple of nods. No one's going to put a hand up because that's, we're not supposed to do that. But it's righteous anger all the time, isn't it? Right, always righteous anger. Like when someone cuts you up. But maybe you know all the characters in this. Maybe you don't, and that's cool because we're going to go through them. And I'm going to squeeze all of them into 5 weeks. I was going to do a 10-week series, but I just thought I was just, dragging it out a bit too much. And so I'm going to talk about all of these different characters, all these different emotions, all of these things that are inside of us, and look at how God created our emotions and for his glory, and how each one, if you like, whether it's joy, sadness, anger, fear, and all the rest that we'll get to, has a role in our spiritual life as well, and even our growth. And our growth in our faith. And a few months back, I think it's a year ago now, we've done a series of the Snow White series, and we looked at all the dwarfs with a similar sort of context, and we looked at the dwarf Happy. And but we're really going to be taking it deeper today by exploring Joy, who's that one there? I think we've got a bigger picture of Joy, actually. Joy! This actually reminds me of when I met Steph. Honestly, when I met her on the bus, this is what she was like. Pre-4 kids, like every interaction, hello! I don't know what attracted me to her. It was definitely part of it. But I want to look at Joy, but this character in the movie and in our life. But really, I want to focus in on, rather than just sort of this, because joy is a funny term and we use it interchangeably with happy and sometimes, and it gets a bit grey. But I want to view it through the lens of gratitude. So I want to think about joy, but through the lens of gratitude. And so this week we're highlighting just Joy. We're just doing one character today. Joy's personality in the film, which is obviously one-dimensional. That's the point. You've got all these different parts of somebody's character. So Joy's character is one-dimensional, and it is that of Joy. She's always grateful. Like, if you watch the movie, she's always grateful for everything, seeing the good in absolutely everything, even the small things. Like, it's a sunny day. It's, oh, anyone like that? I'm like that, definitely with sunny days. It's like, oh, the sun's out, even if it's cold. The little things that bring her joy. Her favourite song, a childhood memory. If you watch the movie, a memory pops in, like these little balls of memory pop into the brain, and she's like, oh, it's great. You've got friends like that, they irritate you. Everything's great. But we're looking through the lens of gratitude, and I ask, what small things in your life are you grateful for today? And that's going to run through the theme of what I'm talking about today. And could it be that gratitude, not just joy, but gratitude holds the key to stronger, deeper faith? And gratitude holds the key to stronger and deeper joy. Because I'd argue, and maybe you'll disagree, but I'd argue that joy begins with gratitude. And maybe not always in every context, and maybe we can argue the nuances of the joy of the Spirit, one of the fruits of the Spirit, and how that's disconnected. But in the language that we use surrounding the word joy, I think joy begins with gratitude so often. Usually we think it's the other way around. Usually this is how we play it out in our mind, is that we feel joy about something that's happened, or something that you've got, or something that creates joy, and then you go, I'm grateful for that feeling and for the thing that caused the feeling. That's the way around we think about it so often, that something good has happened, and so it brings me joy, and I'm grateful of that. Or I think we should, like Jesus done so often, flipping things on their head, where joy begins with gratitude. We're going to look at that today. We're reading Nehemiah 8:10. I'm only going to read a snippet. I was going to do loads of this, but we just haven't got the time. But Nehemiah said these words, "Go and enjoy choice food," everyone likes that, "and sweet drinks." That's not good. Coca-Cola. Different sweet drinks he was talking about here. "And send some to those who are nothing prepared." And it says, "This day is holy to our Lord." It says, "Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your," next slide, "strength." Couldn't fit that on. The joy of the Lord is your strength. And to give context here to this Old Testament scripture, you know, the Israelites had returned from exile. You know, every few decades and stuff, they were taken over by another superpower in the region and carted off or killed. But the Israelites had just returned from exile. They'd gone through a really tough period. It just really sucked for them. And this context of this is that they heard the law of God being read aloud for the first time in years. It's the first time they've come back and they've heard the word of the Lord. They've heard the law, the Torah, and it's been taught. And they were frankly overwhelmed. The people were overwhelmed, like weeping with conviction. And it must have been sort of this really crazy combination of emotions that we're going through, because they've just had a tough time, but they've sort of come out of it. You know that sort of feeling where you like still hurt and can feel pain, but relieved. It's like when you come out of a car accident. You're like super relieved and like, wow, but like your body's still going, I'm terrified. Like this combination of emotions that they would have been going through, where they're weeping with conviction, especially the law being laid down. It's like, this is what God said. Many of them must have been going, I haven't been living like that. But at the same time, in awe of what God said about everything. And so they had these two things going on because they hadn't had that input for years. But Nehemiah encouraged them and used the word, do not grieve. Do not grieve, do not be sad at this stage, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. And when you break down the story and you read about it, gratitude was central to their joy. Gratitude was central to their joy. And they were reminded of God's goodness. It's like, yeah, you've gone through you've gone through decades of really hard, horrible stuff that you can't even explain away. And yet, gratitude was central to their joy because it reminded them of God's goodness despite their trials. They were called to celebrate his faithfulness. Nehemiah was saying, we're going to celebrate. This is a time of joy. You've gone through all this hard stuff and all the ramifications of that you're still carrying, literally carrying sometimes. And he's saying, now's a time to celebrate. We're going to have joy. We're going to be grateful for what God has done. And some of them must have been like, what? For all just like the people who were leaving in the Exodus, the Israelites who were going through the desert. Oh, we're supposed to be grateful for this wilderness, are we, Moses? Being called to be grateful and express joy even through the trial, or at the end of the trial, you're still carrying the baggage of the trial. Effectively, gratitude turned their sorrow into joy. It was gratitude that turned their sorrow into joy and gave them the strength for the future. You know, gratitude turns our focus from what we lack to what God has already done. That's what gratitude does. Because so often we're in a world, aren't we? We've got so much. We've got so much stuff. Life is so easy in so many regards. Excuse me. But gratitude turns our focus from what we lack. Because some of us are sitting here today and still think we lack this, we lack that, we lack this, we lack that. And it turns us from looking at what we lack to look at what God has already done. As a culture, we're so ungrateful. I'm not talking about you, obviously, just the culture generally. But we've got even clean water. It's like, just to be able to have clean water and turn on a tap. If some of you this morning, maybe your tap was frozen. All of a sudden, you're grateful for when it's not. That we can go and buy food from the shop so easily instead of having to toil and grow it. My mum used to grow a lot of food when we were young. We were quite poor, but she had an allotment, and so we grew a lot of food. It's so much hard work growing food. Has anyone done allotmenting? Is that the right term? Allotmenting. Allotting? No, that's not right. Omeletting. It's not omeletting. But the process of growing is so hard. I'm so grateful we can go to the shops. But like instant communication, air conditioning or heating that will finally catch up. It was really struggling the other day, the heating. It was like, the radiator's like this, come on! And it wouldn't break past 14 degrees in here. The ability to travel the world. We've got all these things going on, and yet many of us have become desensitized to them blessings. Haven't we? We can get desensitized to being grateful for them things and taking them for granted. And why am I saying this? It's because I think, could the same happen in our faith? Can the same happen in our faith, that so much good stuff and yet we can be blind to it? You know, we've heard about Jesus' sacrifice so many times that it sort of feels normal, like it's just part of the furniture. How do we recover that wonder? How do we recover that gratitude for everything that he's done? And there's a lovely story in Luke where Jesus paints this picture of, I think, the model of how we should be grateful. And the example was of quite a big thing, I would argue, but let's read it, Luke 17, 11 to 19. It says this: Now he was on his way to Jerusalem. Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee, and he was going into a village. 10 men who had leprosy met him. You've got to remember that they were sort of pushed out to they weren't allowed to associate with anybody else. It was like they were put out, no contact. This was a horrible disease. Horrible disease. And they stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. When he saw them, he said, go show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, because that's what they would have done to try and say that we're clean, it says, and as they went, they were cleansed. That's a massive thing. Like you can't, we just skip over that. It's like an amazing, miraculous healing of a horrible disease that was instantaneous. And it says this in verse 15, one of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. One of them out of 10 praised God with a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And it's just, I love that Jesus Luke adds the context. And he was a Samaritan, by the way. Because in this culture, it'd have been like they'd have been lowly. They're not as good as us. And yet even him came back and was thankful to God. And Jesus asked, we're not, I love this. Jesus asked, this is the sort of question I would ask if I'm honest. We're not all 10 cleansed? Sure, I felt the power go out. I don't know how it works. I felt the cleansing power go out. I definitely healed 10 lepers. Maybe they got lost. We're not all 10 cleansed. And he asked the one, where are the other 9? Where are your mates? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? He was making a point, compounding the point. And so there's no one else realized what's been done for them and are grateful for what has been done. Then he said to him, the one who'd come back, rise and go. Your faith has made you well. And who knows, we don't know what happened to the other 9. We don't know if some of them turned around later and come back. We don't know if they got leprosy again in the future and weren't blessed in a way. Maybe we don't know what happened in them. I don't know. But I do know what happened to this one. But check it. Jesus heals 10 lepers, but only one returns to give thanks. And like, I read this, and because I read it through the human context, it sounds like Jesus is like annoyed. And I don't think that's actually the case, because he'd have known what was going to happen. But it sounds like Jesus was annoyed, but I'm not sure that's true. It's like what he was doing was, for everyone around, and the man, was setting an example, a template of how we should deal with gratitude with things that happen in our life. He was saying, this is what should happen. That 9 that ran away, that's not how we do things. This one way is how we do things. This is the way it should be. See, Jesus wasn't like maybe we would feel. They weren't great. Like maybe you got someone a Christmas card or a Christmas gift and they didn't send you a thank you. And then you send you a thank you card for their thank you card. You know, some of you get hurt when someone doesn't appreciate something you've done. And you're wounded maybe, like, I'm not getting a card next year, I'm not going to get... You know, but this is not what's going on here with Jesus. He's not like, they didn't say thank you. He wasn't, Jesus doesn't need your thanks and praise. Like, I think it's nice, but he doesn't need it. It's more about the effect that it had on the bloke who did come back. Jesus is like, the fact you've come back and shown gratitude and thanks, this is what it's about. That is gonna change your life more than even the healing. The fact that you are going to build your life on an attitude and a spirit of gratitude toward God. But, you know, the Samaritan's gratitude didn't just express joy. That was part of it. It was expressing joy through gratitude. But it, I think, deepened his faith. He became closer to Jesus, and I mean in a practical sense. He came back to Jesus, was close to Jesus, talked to Jesus. And it deepened his faith. And Jesus says, rise and go, your faith has made you well. Like I said, it's like it compounded his joy. I can imagine that built a deeper relationship with Jesus than the ones who just run off happy. Yay! You see, I think this. Gratitude doesn't just follow blessings, it multiplies them. When you're blessed and you are grateful for it, it actually multiplies the blessings. I think gratitude connects us more deeply to God and his purposes. And so the other 9, I believe, missed out on a deeper relationship, a deeper joy than they had. Even though I'm sure they were overwhelmed with joy with what happened. But perhaps that was superficial and short-lasting until the next problem arose. You see, they could have had a deeper connection and relationship and a touching with Jesus. But they failed to come back in gratitude. And so I want to ask you, what blessings in your life have you taken for granted? Because I'm sure all of us have. How has gratitude or lack of it affected your faith and joy? Because, you know, I said that joy begins with gratitude. And if joy does begin with gratitude, I want you to think about this. If you're not full of joy, maybe you're sat here and you're not full of joy. Maybe the last few months or years or just right now is a difficult time, or you just sort of feel a bit benign or vanilla and you're not full of joy. I want you to think about it. If joy begins with gratitude, if you're not full of joy, maybe it's because you've neglected to be grateful. If you're not full of joy or expressing joy, maybe it's because you've neglected to be grateful. Oh, that doesn't sound nice. I'm not judging you. Like some of you hate me now, I understand. Because I'm speaking to me just as much. I am. Another way of thinking about it is if you're not grateful equals not joyful. Who's a maths geek? Some of you like that more. Not grateful equals not joyful. I was going to put it on the screen, but it didn't seem spiritual enough. So a more spiritual, churchy way to put it is gratitude is the seed of joy. Is that better for you old schoolers? Gratitude is the seed of joy. So if we don't have that in us, perhaps it's because we're neglecting to sow the seed of gratitude, and so we'll never reap the fruit of joy. And so how can we cultivate that in us? How can we cultivate gratitude? What practical steps can we do? And I think a big one is, I think it's so easy to miss, is to remember the small things. Remember the small things, appreciate the small things, have gratitude for the small things. And in the movie Inside Out, Joy in the movie reminds us that the small things can spark gratitude. And like all the time, like little things, she's just like, yeah, it's great. All the time, thanks. But there's a famous line in the movie, I don't think I've got on the screen, that she says, find the fun. Find the fun. That's what I used to love about Steph. Like, she is still fun, even though we're knackered with 4 kids. She'll find the fun in the most stupid things that aren't fun at all. Find the fun. You know, gratitude helps us find the fun. And let's church it up. Find the blessing. Find the blessing in the small, ordinary parts of life. But let's be clear, to find it, sometimes you've got to look for it. Just like when I lose stuff in my house, you know, nearly 90% of the time it's in the junk drawer. Has anyone got a junk drawer? Look for it. Steph, where's the sellotape? You know. That's in the junk. I'll go and find it in the junk. But you have to go and look for it. And I'm a man. I'm not good at looking. I open the drawer. Don't move anything. Just look at the things. Steph, it's not in here. You have to look for it. And the same in our life with things to be grateful for. The small thing, they're small, they can hide in the cracks, but they're there. Sometimes we have to look for things to be grateful for. You see, joy is not about feeling happy. It's maybe part of the formula, part of the equation, part of the jigsaw, but it's rooted, joy really is rooted in recognizing and appreciating God's goodness in every part of our lives. Recognizing it. Not necessarily feeling it, but recognizing it in every part of our lives. And so I ask you, what are, I don't know, a few small things in your life that you're grateful for today? Remember the small things. I think when we do that as well, and it's not that we can't remember the big things, but they're easier to see, but some of the big things, all the small things, the second thing that we can do is revisit God's goodness. In the Old Testament, it's all the time like this reminder. We set this as a reminder. We'll make this pile of stones as a reminder. We'll write this down as a reminder. We need to revisit God's goodness, and that will help us cultivate this attitude of gratitude. When we spend time reflecting on what God's done in our life, how He's provided for us in the past, or shown up when we were least expecting, or forgiven sins, or answered prayers, whatever the thing might be, instead of focusing on the pain of the past. It's really easy, isn't it, if you've gone through something really tough, or you're in something really tough, it's just to look back all the time about the pain of them difficult situations. And it's hard because God built us and our brain in a way that is actually helpful sometimes. It stops us getting hurt in the future. Like practically, if you put your hand in fire and it hurts, your brain goes, remember that? That hurts. Don't do it. Carry that pain with you because it'll help you. But so often that gets messed up in our relationships and things that we then just carry the pain of the past in our memory instead of focusing on the goodness. You know, when they're in the promised land, hopefully the Israelites didn't look back and say, oh, we were in the wilderness for 40 years. And other people are like, shut up, we're here now. Enjoy it. We need to look back and revisit God's goodness in the past, not just on the hard things that have happened. Spend time reflecting on that. And I love this line in the film. It's so funny that Joy says when she's trying to cheer everybody up, trying to cheer the room up in the brain around the control desk. Actually, I think it was when they were out, lost somewhere, but trying to cheer Riley up. And she uses this line. This is the sort of thing I would say. Remember the funny movie, you know, where the dog dies? Remember Old Yeller or Mice and Men, or what's another one where they have to shoot their pet dog in the back of the head? You know, them great fun movies. But that's why it was so funny in the movie, because Joy, the one-dimensionality of Joy is like, remember that great movie that's actually really quite awful? Remember that great movie, the funny movie where the dog dies. You see, Joy says this while trying to cheer Riley up by combining conflicting memories. Rather than just focusing on that dog that died. The rest of the movie was perhaps funny, but she's combining humor and sadness, and the Brits are brilliant at that, by the way. But you know, joy and gratitude often coexist with other emotions. And if we're to be filled with joy, we must choose to find reasons to thank God, even in the messiness of life. Even when we're feeling the other things, even when the other characters are trying to fight control of the control board of our world, we need to choose to find reasons to thank God. Choose to find reasons to thank God and be grateful and sow the seeds of our future joy. And then remember to revisit that over and over again and meditate on them things over and over, even if they're not perfect. And then when we've done that, what we should do, hopefully, in whatever way you do it, is respond with worship. With worship. I don't mean just with music, with your hands up or however you do it, because we sort of put worship in a box, don't we, in the Christian culture. But respond with worship. You know, in Philippians 4:4, it says that rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. We should respond in worship. And I think gratitude leads to worship. So how can you thank God? Not just in words, but in action. It's not just about, like I said, singing songs or saying prayers, but living generously or sharing what you have with others or serving others or whatever it might be, and how you express worship of the creator of the universe, but showing gratitude for all that God has done. respond in worship. And there's an amazing line in the movie where Sadness is sort of my favourite character, actually. She's a bit like Eeyore, you know. You got a few friends like that, yeah? Yeah? Hey there, Pooh. And you got a Tigger, that's Joy. We could have used Winnie the Pooh instead. It's the same movie, isn't it? I just thought about it, just different. Hey there. That's my Pooh impression there. Hey there, Christopher Robin. But in the movie, Sadness responds in a difficult situation. They're lost. If you've seen the movie, they're lost out somewhere in Riley's brain and don't know how to get back to the control center. And they're like, we've got to get back there. It's working on automatic. And Sadness says, she's crying, and she says to the rest of them, crying helps me slow down and obsess over the weight of life's problems. It's a brilliant line in the movie. It helps you do that. And Joy can't understand that because she's the different dimension of emotion. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you've got a friend who's like that and you're like at the Joy end of the spectrum. You're like, why would you focus on that? That makes no sense. Sometimes it makes sense, and we'll talk about that next week. But crying helps me slow down, and here's the bad word, obsess over the weight of life's problems. Where you contrast that with Joy's favourite line throughout the movie, which is, think positive. Think positive. And she's like, oh, it helps me if I just concentrate and slow down and just ponder on the horrible things of life. So what do we do? What do you do? What do I do when there's a problem? Obsess over it and just pause like Sadness? No, we probably shouldn't do that. Or should we be like Joy and just think positive and really ignore the problem? No, we probably shouldn't do that. But what we probably should do is somewhere in between or something completely different, is sow the seeds of our future joy by responding in gratitude and worship. It's no matter what the case is, it's not just push through with a positive mental attitude because you'll just be knackered further down the road. Maybe it's not just focusing on the problem and being a sad sack, but actually sowing the seeds of our future joy by responding in gratitude and worship. Because sometimes life feels rather heavy. Maybe you're that at the moment, if life's feeling heavy, or maybe you can relate in the past sometime. And rather than just pushing through it in blind optimism like Joy would, like she's one-dimensional, that's all it is, just push through. Whereas intentional, this is the word, intentional gratitude, choosing gratitude. Not gratitude that's birthed from a feeling of joy or something good that's happened. Not that sort of gratitude. Intentional gratitude helps us slow down, but not to obsess over problems, but reflect on how God has been faithful through it or faithful in the past. It's a choice. It really is a choice. Intentional gratitude. And I've actually got a degree in this. It's something I've had to work hard through. It was a 6-year degree, but last night I shared at Love the House, and I've done it a couple of times on Sundays, and I won't go into details, but my struggle of being poorly from 2019 for a number of years, really quite poorly, where I reacted to some prescribed pain meds, and I've talked to a few people in our Connect group about some of the ramifications of that and what it's done, but it left me effectively with a bag full of ongoing, long-term, chronic, nasty side effects. Just really rubbish. And so, but the one that's perhaps was the hardest, the one side effect of that was ongoing for many years was no positive emotion. And I know I'm not a very emotional guy, but the one I did have was just like a bit of joy all the time. I was like a 2, like Steph was a 10 all the time. I'm like a 2 or 3 in joy. Like everything's good all the time. And since that time when I was really poorly, it's like I had 0 positive emotion ever. Didn't feel anything positive. Now I count my blessings, and I'm grateful that I was never wired to someone who was quite neurotic, who had lots of negative emotion. Most of us have a balance of that. Me growing up all the way until I was 35, didn't really have negative emotion. People would die, people would be horrible to me, people would lie about me, people would punch me in the face, and I don't really carry negative emotion. And so I wasn't like Sadness over these years, like, oh. It was just the absence of any positive emotion. Just no positive emotion. And I can't, like, it sounds like, oh, it just sounds a bit benign, but can I tell you that wears you down really quickly? Because it's all part of our brain chemistry that actually causes you to drive to do things. And so it was not a nice feeling. I had a few blips, like every 3 months, I'd have 5 minutes of like, whoo, oh, it feels normal. And then it's like, oh, it's gone again. And many of you maybe relate on a day-to-day basis, and that's normal for us to go in and out of that, you know, as our brain chemistry changes or circumstance changes. But this is an ongoing 6 years of just like nothing. And so it sucked. No happy brain chemicals really are not very nice. Feelings that we take for granted. We do, because that's how our brains, like, we take for granted that we walk or that we can catch something or we've got thumbs that do things. We just take it for granted. Like simple things like even the love you feel for your kids. That's the level I'm talking about. Gone. Can I tell you, it sucks. It was horrible. It is horrible. And so, but over the last few months, along with a few other things that have happened, I started to choose gratitude. Because I couldn't feel it. I had to choose gratitude for some of the little things. I want to be clear. Even though those little things didn't feel like they were enough. I chose to think grateful thoughts. Think grateful thoughts. And say grateful words. And praise and thank God for those little things that were not enough. Because when you don't have that chemistry going on, nothing feels enough because nothing ticks that box. And so choosing to do that. And I want to be clear, I don't mean when I had a fuzzy feeling about something that felt nice, I would then choose to be grateful because I didn't have the fuzzy feeling. I had nothing to go off to start with. And what I mean is I meditated on the fact that something was good. Because I've got enough brains to understand this thing is good. Doesn't feel good, doesn't feel enough, I don't get any pleasure from it, but it is good. I know it's good. Even if it's not good enough in my own measure. And what I started doing was thanking God for it. Being like, thank you for that thing that brings me no pleasure, but I thank you because it's good. Even though in the now it brought me no joy, and I'd do that. Thank you for this, thank you for that. Think of the little things that I know are good that I don't get any benefit from, it feels. And it's weird, over 6 years, nothing. And just over the last few months, maybe 4 or 5 months, something like that, by some miracle, in the gratitude, joy was created. In that gratitude, joy was created. And I said to Steph a few weeks back, it's like, it's weird. It's like, I'm feeling normal again. I can feel, I notice colours now. It's like, oh, that's nice. Like an old person who looks at buildings, you know, oh, that's a lovely building. Like, some of you appreciate that sort of thing, some don't. But like colours in trees, all of a sudden my brain chemicals are like, oh, this is good. And joy started coming, and I probably mean happiness more than joy, like, let's separate them. But these things started coming back to me, really. And it's been nice. But joy was created, those positive feelings have come back for the first time in years. And I want to be upfront that it's not the full picture of me moving forward to being restored, I think, or fully restored. That's I shared last night, that's my word of the year. That was I used a word, if you were here last week. Kaylee's were something, her word of the year. And my word of the year is restored. And you see, I've learned that gratitude is the gateway to joy. And maybe I'm the extreme case. I wish you never have to go through that side of things. But perhaps for all of us, gratitude is the gateway to joy, and you have to go through it to get it. Because gratitude doesn't just flow out of joy, it creates joy. Joy flows from a heart of gratitude, and gratitude comes from seeing the God's goodness in our life and all the things big and small, and us choosing to revisit those regularly and respond in worship like we've talked about. And when we intentionally focus on God's goodness, even in the smallest things, our hearts are lifted and our perspective shifts. The Bible talks about this in lots of different ways. And we experience his strength and his joy. Remember Nehemiah 8:10, the joy of the Lord is your strength. And maybe you're sat here and you think, Phil, I ain't got nothing to be grateful for, though. I've got nothing to be grateful for, so I'm not going to have any joy about that. And I've got no seeds to plant, if you like, for my future joy. Well, I'll leave you with the words of Jesus, Luke 10:20, that just says this: rejoice that your names are written in heaven. if that's all you've got at the moment, and you're a follower of Christ, is rejoice that your names are written in heaven. That's one thing to be grateful for. That's one thing to be grateful for. But I have a challenge for the week, if you've been lacking in joy particularly, is this week or even a month maybe. I want a little challenge. Only pray this week with words of gratitude. Because so often when we pray to God, it's like, help me with this, I need that, make this happen. I've got a challenge for you if you've been lacking in joy, is only pray this week with words of gratitude to God, of thanking him for the things that he's done in your world, for every small thing in your life. And as you do that, watch how your perspective changes and how joy begins to overflow in your heart, because our gratitude is the seed for our joy. Not just the global concept of gratitude is the seed for joy. Our gratitude is the seed for our joy. Amen. Let's pray. Father, I just thank you for the Inside Out series.